All right, good evening. I will now call to order the Monday, March 4th, 2024 Town Council meeting. If you would please stand and join me for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the first item up on the agenda is the approval of the February 20th, 2024 Town Council meeting memoranda. A copy has been posted. Are there any questions from councilors? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the Town Council minutes from the February 20th, 2024 meeting.
Second.
I got a first from Councilor Norris, a second from Councilor Sampson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next, the approval of the February payroll claims. Are there any questions from councilors? I'll make a motion to approve February payroll claims.
Second.
A second by Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next on the agenda is the approval of the March 4th, 2024 claims. Are there any questions from councilors?
Did we get more information on the Witzig meeting?
Yeah, Heather actually shared with me her legal opinion on it, and I have no problem with paying the claim. So,
I do have a question, and it's about seeing some names of residents on there that are getting refunds from the waste. I don't know if it's the wastewater treatment or I believe it's wastewater treatment. And this is not the first time it's happened. And I just don't know why it's continuing to happen. Are they getting billed overly? It's kind of frustrating because it's the same names that this happened in, I don't know if it was 8 months ago, but it's happened before with Malure as the last name on one.
As far as repetitive names, I'm not sure that I can answer that, but usually what happens in those situations, somebody might make an overpayment. We've actually had some people that accidentally mailed in their mortgage payments instead of wastewater, and so then we have to turn around and flip that back to them. And so there's a lot of various reasons why. If they move, they might pay in advance. They move, they get a credit back. There's a lot of different reasons why somebody would get a refund.
Okay. And I do realize that person owns several parcels as well. So I think that could be part of it. And that might be why we see it again. So it just, I believe I was told that they were billed that. Mm-hmm. So I just don't want people to be billed incorrectly. So if we can just keep an eye on it. Yep. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Any other questions from councilors? I'll make a motion to approve March 4th claims.
Second.
Second from Councilor Melton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is request to speak on agenda item. Amy, do we have any requests to speak on agenda item?
No, we do not.
And we still have not gotten you a microphone.
Nope.
We should do that. Up next is the mayor administration update. We have Mayor Stair here this evening. Good evening.
Good evening, councilors. It's good to see everybody tonight. Well, 6 out of the 7 at least. You probably noticed the new Welcome Center desk as you came in the door today. By the end of the week, we will have that desk fully staffed with the town's liaison and also our security officer. Construction is pretty much finished, and the next step is going to be to get IT installed. We think that this is going to position us to offer much better and more efficient services to both our employees and our guests. So that will be there in place by the end of the week. Now, moving on to the priorities for 2024. As far as the comprehensive plan is concerned, we did get 9 proposals through the RFQ process, and the committee narrowed that list down to 3 finalists. I want to thank Councilors Sampson and Burke for your help in that. The short list of consultants under consideration for the comprehensive plan include the firms Rundell Ernstberger Associates, or REA, Hannum Waggle and Klein Engineering, which is also known as HWC, and also Planning Next, which is a group out of Columbus, Ohio. So the next thing that's going to happen on Saturday, March 16th, we will have each of them make a presentation to a joint meeting of the Plan Commission and the Town Council. This is going to be done in an open public meeting in this room. It'll be streamed live, and the goal is to merge with a consensus on which company will lead us through the comprehensive plan process. I hope you'll all be able to attend. And again, this is a public meeting. It'll be posted appropriately in compliance with Indiana's open door law. The meeting begins at noon on that day, and we expect it to wrap up by 4 p.m. The South Village, we are working through a planned unit development document that will provide a code for the mix of uses in the South Village. Unlike previous PUDs in Zionsville, this one will be directed by the town rather than a developer or a group of developers. It is in draft form right now, and we plan to have a working copy by the end of this month. Now, I promised you a South Village update on the first meeting of each month, so I'm going to ask Corey Sharp to come up and deliver that in just a couple of minutes.
Couple seconds.
Just take a couple.
Do you have the slide? Joe, do you have another slide? Oh, no. Okay. Well, as we're preparing for a planned unit development for the South Village, one of the key things that we're doing is taking a look back at all of the studies that have been done already, because we understand that professionals have already been plugged in on this area. So I just wanted to highlight some of those studies. The first one we're all familiar with because we've been talking about it at least for the last year and a half. It's the 2021 Zionsville Gateway Area Master Plan. This is a master plan that has been adopted into the comprehensive plan, and it makes specific recommendations on where and how development can be formed around Sycamore, Main Street, and First Street. The second plan that we evaluated was the 2012 Economic Development Plan. This is on the Planning Commission's website. If we had this, you would have this great QR code, and you could just scan and see all of these, but I'll tell you where they're at. It's on the Planning Commission website. And this plan has a couple different sections. One of them specifically is for downtown, and it grabs the area basically between First and Main Street, from Pine Oak area all the way down to the interstate. Specifically, it talks about extending the village all the way down to 106th Street, and then to work collaboratively with the chamber to create a marketing package to strengthen the existing business opportunities that are out there, and then promote tourism in the village and the commercial areas around it. And finally, the last study that we have studied in-house is the 2014 Downtown Zionsville Market Study and Parking Analysis. This is an analysis that took into consideration marketing specific for the village. So again, working with the chamber and the partners to manage and advocate for the village. And then a parking analysis that looked at what is the peak time when people are there, and when and where is there ample parking, and where is there a gap. We are actually, the RDC, working on getting an update to this because it's 10 years old, and of course village activities have changed since this has been done. So we are getting this updated, and that will go into consideration as we shape out our vision for the South Village.
As promised, you did that in a few minutes. Thank you, Corey. The next priority item is digitization and cybersecurity. Now, I did mention in our last meeting that we're now cashless in Town Hall. The next step is to be able to accept all payments through our website. Currently, we can only do that with wastewater payments, but we can use that as a template to take on other payments as well. That is in process. And then once we have the payment protocol in place, we can begin to digitize our permitting and inspections So we are making progress one step at a time. Also, we are part of the state's first round of municipalities that will come under the CrowdStrike program, which is a very robust cybersecurity protocol. It is federally funded and administered by the state, and we are one of 30 municipalities chosen to use it in the first round, and that's because Joe Rust has been closely involved in its implementation. So we are proud of Joe for getting us in the first round of that, and that is making a big difference in our cybersecurity. The next item under priorities is finance, and I'm so happy to tell you all tonight that the reconciliation of 2023 was completed on time. During the last week of February, it was uploaded to Gateway to the state as required by March 1st. In fact, we got it in a few days early. So our Finance Director, Cindy Poore, is here to give you the 2023 financial report.
Good evening. I just wanted to touch on a few highlights. One of them, what Mayor Stair just spoke of, we were able to get the annual report in on time. 2023 is completely reconciled, and 2023 has been closed out. So our new employee as of in November, Janet, will start in 2024 reconciliations for January to get those caught up. And you guys will start getting reports on a monthly basis, the fund report and the appropriation reports. As the slide says, we do finally have a full staff now, plus one. Thank you to you guys that allowed us to start another position and hire for that. When I wrote this, we didn't have everything submitted yet, so that's the reason why I said we were on target, and we met that target. Probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll be calling State Board of Accounts to set up an audit for 22 and 23. And then I just want to also give a shout out to Crow and Baker Tilly and my staff. This was no easy feat, getting 3 years of issues from a financial system that did not want to cooperate, cleaned up in a year. And it was a lot of sweat and long hours that it took to get this cleaned up. So we couldn't have done it without Crow, Baker Tilly, and the staff that I have right now. So getting into some numbers, I just wanted to touch on some highlights. With this being the first report, President Plunkett and Mayor Stair, I kind of want to get together with you so we can set up a template on how we want to see this each quarter. And that way, we're always seeing the consistency and being able to compare from one quarter to the next. Then we know we're looking at the same type of information. So maybe in the near future, we can get together and do that. Next slide, please. So these are a few of our revenue categories. It's not everything. We would have many slides if I had everything on here. But these are just some of the major ones that I touched base on and what we brought in 2023. The next slide are this is our budget, our DLGF budget, non-DLGF budget. We had $10 million in additional appropriations, and I will say we usually don't have that much. That was because we had to do some additionals to put, there were some budget numbers for the non-DLGF that did not get included last year, and so we had to do those in the form of an additional appropriation. So that made it look a little higher than what we normally do. And then 2022 encumbrances that moved into 2023. So we ended up bringing in $69 million is what we ended up having between additional appropriations, budget, and encumbrances. Next slide, expenses. I broke this down by our categories, our budget categories, personal services, operating supplies, and so forth. And this is what the spend was in 2023 for each of the categories. As you'll see, We have 6.4 million that's going to get carried over into 24 for encumbrances. A lot of that is to do with contracts. I know fire and their equipment, they're having to pull forward, and their equipment is not cheap. So there's quite a bit of encumbrances that were pulled forward this year. And then there was approximately 6.2 million of unspent appropriated dollars that dropped back into the reserves and their various funds that they were initially appropriated from. That's what I have. And then you should have received the fund report and the appropriation report that gave you the overall total picture of everything. So, questions?
Any questions for Cindy?
Yeah, I have a question. I was looking at the appropriations report and seeing the allocations with the adjustments, and I was wondering if that's how we were correcting the funding that we were making all your reconciliations with. Is that where
that could be some of it? That could be some of it. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll see less of that than now that we're going into a cleaner
Yes.
system?
Absolutely.
Because there are some pretty substantial ones.
Right, right. And some of those, see that additional and adjustment column, it's for the additionals and adjustments.
Right.
So some of the larger items were probably additionals that actually went in, but yes, there would have been some adjustments too as far as doing the reconciliations.
So what would be reasoning for like an additional item? What would make that item hit and then the additional instead of the main line that I don't know, maybe we should just do this in person so that I could ask you questions.
Yeah, I can explain it to you, but basically with the additionals that would show up in that column, these are items that weren't originally budgeted for, and they, something may have come up that they needed to, a department needed to spend over and above their budget. And so they came and asked for those additional funds,
Okay.
so it wouldn't deplete their budget that they already had.
Okay, so it's through like a process of asking. for
Yes,
additional- okay.
yes.
And then, do you feel like we are going to kind of revisit how things are not on some of the budgets that we passed? How we spoke about that last meeting where the ARPA dollars were not matching, and 150,000 had come off. Is there a way, like now that we can have a running total, that maybe some of those items would be more obvious, do you think?
I do know, and Crow and I will be sitting down in the very near future to discuss the budget process this year. There are going to be some changes on how things were done, and so hopefully less of that will happen.
Okay,
Yeah.
when I ran through it, I did have that moment where I was like, what am I looking at?
Right, right.
Because I see totals and no details on
Yeah.
some of those numbers, so.
And some of those in the additional and adjustment column that you're talking of, some of that would have been the non-DLGF budget that didn't get put in there as well.
Right.
So that's probably what because a lot of it were bond payments.
Okay.
And so they would have been larger amounts.
Okay, and I saw some of it would come up later in the meeting, as far as like the Ready Grant and stuff like that, the way I
Yes.
saw some
Yes.
flipping, so.
Yeah,
But thank you for your work. I know that you really worked hard on this, and I commend you.
thank you.
And I just want you to hear our praise because you've done a lot of work this year especially.
Thank
so
you. I
we
appreciate
really
it.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other
Yeah, Cindy,
questions?
I would also, congratulations on getting everything done. I'm sure it's a giant weight off of your shoulders, and thanks to the two firms that helped get us across the finish line. I would love nothing more than to sit down, and I'll connect with you offline, but just to get a better understanding of all the different funds and what they're
Sure.
for, because there's so many of them, I could probably make some guesses that would be wrong, but I'd rather hear it from you. So I'll connect with you probably later this week.
Yeah, put me on a second for that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. This is such a good thing that our finances are back on track, and look forward to making regular reports to you as we continue moving forward. Also under updates tonight, we have the salary ordinance amendment that's before you tonight for the solar eclipse day, which is the 8th of April. Now, I want to point out that this is a one-off for this year only. This is, of course, the date of the great eclipse. The school district has added this date to the spring break calendar, and it's a Monday, so I think allowing our employees an extra day for some family time during a once-in-a-lifetime event is appropriate. Now, I understand that paid holidays are an expense to the town, both in dollars and in efficiency, but I will point out that this is a leap year, and we were fully staffed on February 29th, so perhaps we could consider it to be a wash. And if you're worried about setting a precedent, keep in mind that the next total eclipse in Zionsville will be in October of 2153. And I've done a little math on this, so this is going to be an issue for our great grandchildren to deal with when it comes around again. And also, I want you to know that we're putting together a public safety plan to make sure that our residents and visitors are well served on that day, and we will share appropriate details of that with you as the day gets closer. So I'll take a moment here and stop if anybody has any questions about that or concerns.
No, I think that's on the agenda, right? Later on the agenda.
It is on the agenda,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, we can walk through it then.
Okay.
If there's any. I think that makes sense.
Okay, well, I'll be here. The next item is the golf course. The RFP process was completed since we last met, and we got 3 proposals. Of those 3, one of them rose to the top as being the most consistent with what we asked for, and we will meet with them later this week to negotiate the details. Now, as I said from the beginning, one option here is to continue operating the course the way we have been since the town took it over in 2007. Hopefully through this process, though, we will be able to find some efficiencies to make the experience even better for our golfers and the employees who keep the course running. The new season does start on or about March 15th. And I think today was such a beautiful day, probably had some people thinking about going out and playing golf. But I don't think that this has to be an issue. If we come to an agreement, outsource the management, we can make sure that the transition period works for everyone. So the opening of the season does not have to be affected. So if the weather is with us on March 15th, we can still open the golf course at that time. And then one other item I have is the communications coordinator, and I am very pleased to tell you all that we have hired a new communications coordinator. Her name is Caitlin Watson. She has a long Zionsville history dating back to when she was 6 days old and came to Zionsville for the first time to visit her grandparents. She has been in and around town ever since, including spending summers here while growing up, and she joins us in this building on April 1st. As I've said, I think she will play a vital role in what we do here going forward. So I look forward to getting her in place and getting her to meet all of you and also our department directors as well. So April 1st, Caitlin will be joining us. Is there any questions anybody has? All righty. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
All right, up next on the agenda, I'm sorry, are there any council updates? Up next will be town council updates. Are there any updates from councilors? All right, moving on to old business. First item up on old business is a consideration of an ordinance vacating portions of public right-of-way. This is in Holiday Farms. It's ordinance 2024-06. This is a final reading. We have Mike Dale, Planning and Building Department Director, to present.
Well, good evening. I think we covered this pretty well 2 weeks ago. Nothing's changed. It's just really relocating an existing easement for a pathway to the north. And then that pathway will be reestablished as part of the platting process.
Are there any questions for Mike?
Mike, the only question I had, and I appreciated Matt Price giving us some maps that we'd asked for at the last meeting. I know Evan and I had asked, and I went out there and looked. I don't think anyone's opposed. I'm certainly not opposed to doing this. What I was trying to figure out was once the path moves around the back of the property, and I know this is to come, but at some point we've talked about certainly, a crosswalk across 421 or a stoplight. I'm trying to figure out where that might be as folks come across. Will they be able to access a trail? And where the easement now, it's moved, and so there are 2 roads that would potentially go to where a stoplight would be if they were to be considered either right at Interactive Academy or further down where the new Century product is going to be. But that's not a trail. I understand there's a sidewalk there. And so just just imagining once that trail comes in, it's just a few years down the road and people are coming in, they're going to come into the neighborhood and there's not going to be a trail there. This is Fredericks is one of the roads. I don't have the map in front of me, but yeah, do you have that map real quick?
I took a picture of it.
Boy Scout. Came prepared. Anyway, this was helpful to me. So Rogers Way is an opportunity south, but again, that's not trail. It's near the trail, and then Fredericks Place would be another potential spot where we assume there could be a crossing. So I know this isn't going to change that. Other than I just want to get in my head. If the trail was not there and Fredericks Place wasn't an option, people coming into the neighborhood are going to be on a street or potential sidewalk until they access the trail. And so if it was where the easement was, I don't know that easement would have necessarily been where there would have been a crosswalk either. But I was just trying to get my head around, thinking ahead a little bit.
That's great. Thank you for that.
And that was kind of my issue as well, was making sure that there was some thought put behind where this trail was going to go. And then am I correct? The Michigan overlay PUD, it requires that the trail go the full length of the property, or
Yes.
is that? Okay.
Yeah, on the east side? Or
Oh, yeah, on the east side. I'm
Yeah,
talking about
okay.
the Holiday Farm side.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not as though it could just cross over and into the east portion, excuse me.
Okay. I have to check that for you. I'd have to confirm that for you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from counselors? I mean, I think from my perspective, I said this last time, I think obviously there's a lot of conversation about sidewalks up and down 421, but that's a completely different discussion than this, in my opinion.
It's not about 421. It's about just making sure that when we do cross over at the stoplight, that it's the right place, that we're thinking ahead about where we want people to come into traffic to pick up the trail. But I'm in favor of it. I just wanted I want people to be thinking about how folks are going to access that trail when they do come across. I know that's down the road, but.
We'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Any other questions for Mike?
Did somebody raise their
I mean,
hand? Somebody raised their hand at the crowd. I didn't know.
I mean,
Well, you got it.
well, I think if you want to come up and chat, you got to go to the microphone, please. And if you would, just state your name and your address for the record.
Hi, I'm Tracy Garantakis, and I'm the one doing this project. And I just wanted to state for the record that the original trail easement was supposed to go through the middle of the site. So the original trail easement wasn't on Fredericks Place. It was like through the actual middle of the site. So I just wanted to state that, because it's not like we were moving it away from where a sidewalk would go. It was inhibiting what we were able to do with the site.
I'm actually glad to see on our map, the trail on the south side. That's what I was trying to say last time. I think when we got a description of what was happening, we were vacating the easement in the middle of the proposed site, but also it only showed the trail going on the west side and north of the building. It did not show that south side. So that's why I kept saying, what about this south side? What about if we needed to go on the east side of your lot that you're closing to perfectly align with a cross. That's what I was trying to say. So that line on Fredericks is actually new from last week or 2 weeks ago, per what we were shown.
Correct.
So I think that's an improvement for me. That answers what I was hoping to see.
Yeah, for the record, Matt Price for Tracy Garantakos. Yeah, the exhibit you saw at the last council meeting just showed the vacated easement and the relocation. It didn't highlight the existing planned sidewalk along Frederick Place. There'll actually be a sidewalk on either side of Frederick Place.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that meets what I was looking for it to have.
Any other questions from counselors? I'd make a motion to approve ordinance 2024-06 on final reading.
Second.
Second from Counselor Norris. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is first item of new business is a consideration of an ordinance amending the 2024 salary ordinance. This is for the holiday schedule, ordinance 2024-07. This is a first reading. We have Joe Keel here. Mayor Stair obviously presented on this earlier. Are there any questions from councilors? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to introduce ordinance 2024-07 on first reading.
Second.
First from Counselor Burke, second from Counselor Melton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is a consideration of a resolution approving the Plan Commission order. This is the Wild Air EDA creation. This is Resolution 2024-08. We have Corey Sharp with us this evening and Heather James.
Good evening, counselors. Corey Sharp with the Redevelopment Commission. Heather James with Ice Miller is here with me, along with the Crow team and the developer team, because, you know, in development, it takes a crew. I'll go quickly over the project, and then Heather can work through the process of approvals. You have 2 approvals for consideration this evening. But before I do this, I believe this is your first TIF project to come before the new council. So I just wanted to touch on the statute and how it reads in regards to how this project specifically. The redevelopment statute allows for TIF to be used to redevelop blighted areas, and it also allows for the redevelopment in economic development areas. Specifically, when we're looking at economic development, it needs to benefit the public health, safety, morals, and welfare, increase economic well-being and of the unit and the state, and serve to protect and increase property values in the unit and the state, and are public uses and purposes for which public money may be spent and private property may be acquired. And that's Indiana Code 36-714 2.5, for those interested. So Wild Air has been a project, hopefully you are familiar with it because it was approved last June for land use. It is 260 acres north of Oak Street on Marysville Road. It is a planned unit development that includes 700 single-family residential units. And then separately, it also calls for 20,000 square feet of office and retail and 11 acres for a senior living development. From the TIF standpoint, it's important to, it's an important distinction to know that the property taxes will be captured for the commercial spaces and the senior living spaces, apartments. It will not be captured for the 700 single-family homes. The developer is requesting that the funds for this public infrastructure be used for basically land improvements, 2 roundabouts on Marysville Road, 10 acres dedicated for a community center that also includes improvements of utilities, road access, and preliminary grading, basically creating 10 acres at the corner of Marysville and Oak as a shovel-ready site for civic use. And then a pedestrian crossing across Marysville Road, all total approximately $12.8 million. That $12.8 million creates the project list, basically, of how these TIF funds can be spent for public infrastructure. The Redevelopment Commission started this process in December of last year, and there was a bit of discussion during that meeting. Unfortunately, we did not have live video during that meeting, so I can't say, oh, just go look there. So I just want to highlight a couple of the questions that were asked during that meeting. We talked about a detailed project and a construction timeline. We just kind of walked through that. Construction-wise, they will start construction as soon as this bond issuance goes through. The first phase is anticipated to be complete at the end of '24. We talked also about a development agreement, which is something new that is going alongside our bond documents. The RDC will enter into an agreement with the developer that highlights all of these commitments to complete the infrastructure within a certain time frame, but also to make sure that the land transfer goes to the RDC as well. Just another, what do you call it, T-crossed. And then we also asked about how they were valuing the civic property. And it provided an explanation that, the property north of there, the senior housing is similar in size, and that market value is around $6 million. And then the civic land, their estimate for the land value is $4.5 million, and of that, $1.5 million it goes towards the infrastructure improvements to make it shovel ready on that site. So that basically highlights the project. If you have specific questions on TIF projections, Crow is here, but I'll let Heather take over on what approvals you have in front of you.
Thanks, Corey. Okay, so before you this evening, there are two documents related to this project. The first one is Resolution 2024-8, and that resolution is simply noting that the Plan Commission and the Redevelopment Commission have already taken action. The Plan Commission adopted the resolution finding that what the Redevelopment Commission did at the declaratory resolution stage is in line with the plan of development for the town. And so the resolution before you this evening is simply saying, yes, we agree, this resolution approves what the Redevelopment Commission and the Plan Commission have already done. So that's kind of on the TIF side of things. Assuming you move forward and adopt that resolution this evening, then we will publish notice and move forward with a Redevelopment Commission public hearing, at which point they can consider adoption of a confirmatory resolution that confirms what they did at the declaratory stage. And then we will come back to you one more time to ask you to adopt a resolution approving creation of the new Wild Air Economic Development Area and the two allocation areas created within that economic development area as outlined in the declaratory resolution that the RDC adopted back in December. The other thing before you tonight is the bond ordinance, and we are only looking for you to introduce the bond ordinance at this point because we need the Economic Development Commission to meet and hold a public hearing to consider adoption of their resolution before we would ask you to move forward with adoption of a bond ordinance. And the Redevelopment Commission will also meet on the bond side to consider adoption of a TIF pledge resolution, pledging the TIF that's generated from this project to the repayment of the bonds. We're not looking to pledge any other funds. It would simply be the TIF generated from the multifamily that would pay back the multifamily bonds. And then if down the road for phase two, we would look at issuing bonds and having the TIF solely generated by the senior living portion of the project pay the senior living bonds, which would be a second series, Series B. So with that, to get through all of the steps involved, we look like we're going to be closing in probably late April, unless anything happens with our current timetable. The bond ordinance before you has all of the maximum parameters that you're used to seeing. So a maximum principal amount, a maximum interest rate, and a maximum term of the bonds. We can't go over any of those parameters without coming back to you. So the bond issuance will be within those parameters, so up to or less than. So we would not go over the $12,822,000 bond amount in this ordinance. We are looking at a developer purchased bond, so the risk is completely mitigated to the town to the extent that the developer does not deliver on their project and generate the assessed value that we expect them to deliver. They simply are not paid back the full amount of the bonds because they're serving that dual role as developer and bond purchaser. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on either document.
Heather, I just want, again, just to reiterate what you guys are asking. So we've got the 12.8, not to exceed 12.8, not to exceed 25 years, not to exceed 8%, even though the projections are 6%, because that's the rate you guys think you can go out and get.
That's right, yeah.
And you guys, we're establishing the EDA, assuming council's prepared and ready to do that tonight, and then introducing the bond ordinance on first reading, and then it would be, at the next meeting, would be finalization of that.
Exactly right.
Are there any questions from councilors for Heather or Corey?
I guess my only question is, having done a couple of these, and I know what's kind of standard, and 25 years isn't certainly not standard, but I know that can be negotiated. Is there any reason we went with 25 and not 20?
Well, the statutory maximum is 25 years, and so we just went with the maximum number. I would have to refer to the Crow team's numbers to see how long they're actually looking at for the projections on how long it's going to take to repay the debt service.
So it's not to exceed 25, so it could be lower.
Correct.
Right, but I hope it is. I hope it's negotiated to be lower.
Becca, Tim, are your projections for a full 25 years? It is for the full 25. So it's unlikely that we'd be able to fill the gap that the developer would need to cover all of the costs that Corey mentioned if we don't have the opportunity to spread those debt service payments out over the full 25 years.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
May I?
Sure.
At what point will we see the development agreement from the RDC? Is that the March 25th special meeting?
The commission meets the March 26th, it's a Tuesday morning at 9 a.m.
Yep, March 26th. Mm-hmm.
That is when we will consider a development agreement.
Okay.
And I'm happy to share that with the council. It will be an agreement between the RDC and the developer.
That'd be great.
Yep.
Thank you.
So some of this might come from my inexperience in setting up a TIF with a developer. So it was my understanding that the land for the community use was, I guess, being donated to the town for this project. But if we set up a TIF for the bond that has that same amount put into it, I was trying to wrap my head around how that's still a donation, because isn't the town's tax money that we would be earning now paying back the developer?
So the economic development area is larger geographically than the two allocation areas within it. So there's a multifamily portion where we're actually generating TIF, and all of the increase in AV that comes from that area will go into a fund. And then there's a separate allocation area for the senior living portion, and the increment from that area will go in a fund. And then the rest of the area that's in the EDA is area where we expect development, but not where we're capturing any TIF.
Okay, so.
Oh, sure.
Hi, Justin.
Good evening. Justin Moffett, CEO of Old Town. I think I want to answer that question in a different way, just so there's clarity on the subject. There's two distinct areas that would be contributed to the town of Zionsville. One is a 30-acre woodland preserve that would be donated as a town park facility. So in the process of planning the development, we came to agreement with the Johnson family that they would donate that to the town of Zionsville to be used as, like I said, woodland preserve more of a passive park space, but add to the park, available park space for the general public for Zionsville, not just the residents of Wild Air. Separate from that, as we were planning the development, we're going back to 2022 now, we were asked to consider the set aside of an area that could be used for a future civic space, like a community center, but ultimately, I'm going to repeat what I've said for every meeting we've discussed this subject. It's not the developer's decision to define how that space gets used, but we were asked by the town leadership at the time to consider setting aside an area to be used for civic space in our master plan, and so we made that decision to hold that area. At the time, we raised our hand and acknowledged that we have a pretty significant stack of asks from us. The roundabouts are significant, probably the most significant direct cost. But when you consider 30 acres of land that was set aside as a park space off the top, and then another 10 acres, we're talking about 40 acres of land that we've set aside for public use in addition to the public infrastructure of roundabouts. And so our discussions with town leadership has been gift of park space, the 30 acres, and then in exchange for the ability to TIF the commercial components, the multifamily and the senior living, we would use those funds to build the public infrastructure like roundabouts, but also offset our costs because we're still actually acquiring that land where the civic use site would go. We're still paying for that. And so it's a direct cost to our budget.
Okay. So you're paying for that, but the Johnsons donated the other.
They will be donating the other 30 acres as a
That'll
park.
come through you, not the Johnsons.
The 30 acres will come as a donation from the Johnsons to the town.
Okay.
And then unrelated to this TIF conversation, our company has partnered with local nonprofit ILAD, not part of the TIF project, but we are donating 20 building pads for their Cross Bridge Point development that will serve as housing for intellectually and developmentally disabled residents of that community.
Justin, does that land, out of curiosity, does that land go to the Parks Board or does that go to the town itself?
We're talking about the Woodland Preserve.
Yeah.
That's really up to the town. So our goal, we've already had some healthy conversation with the Parks Department just to kick that off and start envisioning of what that use could be and how it would get programmed.
Yeah.
But our hope is that we can convene a conversation between the town, Parks Department, and the Johnson family, celebrate something really positive that they're doing. So it's really up to the town to determine what the best facility is to hold that asset.
No, that makes sense. I just want to, obviously want to be cognizant of the cost to the Parks Department to, keep that particular part of the land up,
Absolutely. Just to clarify though, in the stack of expenses that we have within our project budget, and I believe what's listed as a potential use of TIF funds is we are programming that park space out. And so partnering with the town to determine how it gets planned, but then we would be building out that infrastructure for the town. So it wouldn't be an added capital expense for the town.
Well, and I saw that there was a proposed, I guess one of the expenses listed was about the pedestrian crossing. And I mean, growing up in this area, I always thought of that land right there as very wet. And I kind of remember standing water, driving on Oak Street. We used to come up Cooper Road and go to church. So I saw it every Sunday of my childhood, and it was often wet. So there's that consideration for me in two-part. One, in that the civic space, maybe it's changed, but it represents a wetter area of that area. And also, when we look at the expenses that you itemized out, it said a tunnel or a pedestrian crossing. And I wondered if there had been any decision or input on what was going to happen with the pedestrian crossing, because I thought that was a pretty hot topic. I have been watching the plan commissions, and I know that was a big question, and I hadn't heard any progress on the answer to that. You might have said it and I may have missed it, but.
Great question. Glad to tackle that tonight. I'm guessing that will result in another council agenda item in the future. We were asked at the plan commission level before we even made it to council through the PUD process if we would provide options for a safe crossing of Marysville Road between what was set aside as this woodland park space and then the east side of the road. I will add that in the east side of the road is where we have our multifamily development, which includes up to 20,000 square feet of neighborhood retail. We're also planning a dog park and coffee shop, some light retail, that sort of thing. And so we wanted to provide safe access across the road. We were asked to consider a tunnel as an option, and we did some research. We actually dug some test pits to determine what the water table was, and we were pleasantly surprised that it was lower than we had anticipated, and we determined that it was possible to do a tunnel. We didn't advise that the town should want a tunnel because even if we built it up front, the long-term maintenance cost, and the reality is it would be subgrade, it will have moisture, it won't last a long time, and so when it's time to replace it, probably with a concrete structure that's subgrade, it's not going to last 20 years, and so having a future expense there. So it was our recommendation that we do a at-grade pedestrian crossing that had a pedestrian safety island. If you're familiar with that, basically a place to land in the middle before you cross the other lane of traffic, and have what's called a rapid flashing beacon. So it signals that people are crossing. So that was our recommendation. But ultimately, it's the town's decision. And so we're in conversations about what the town's preference is. And so I think that will be something Mr. Dale and Department of Engineering and Board of Public Works will make a decision on, and maybe potentially in partnership with the council.
Okay.
I did want to address water table, though. Because obviously that's a concern for us when we do development work, especially with the scale of this development, really concerned about what issues we might face as we develop the site. I think a lot's changed with the construction of Marysville Road and some of the improved drainage work in the general area. We've actually found the site pretty dry in most areas. There's a few pockets. There are some articulated wetlands in the area where we are preserving as dog park, and a few pockets in that woodland preservation area, but they're not significant in scale. And we found actually the site's really well drained. And so adding in the layer that we're now providing a complete stormwater system for the entirety of the development, we're actually capturing most of those areas other than the areas that are in the woodland preserve that we can't really get to, nor would we want to, as part of the character of the woodland nature preserve.
Okay. I just saw that range in the listing of items that came to your number for the 12 million.
Yes.
It had the difference for the pedestrian, and I wondered if that had still been because you didn't know which option you were doing.
You know which option we would recommend, and it's really a town's decision on which it would like to live with.
I have one other question, particularly looking into the crowd and seeing some of our leadership from our schools is here tonight. Could you address, because I know this will come up with kind of constituent conversations over the next month before you bring this back to us, the impact of this particular TIF on schools, and is there flexibility to craft something where the schools still are able to benefit from this tax revenue?
Sorry. So the CROW team has to prepare a tax impact statement that will go out to all the overlapping taxing units, and that will be done at the stage where we deliver the notice of the public hearing on the declaratory resolution, so the confirmatory resolution stage, but they haven't put that together yet. It's not required to be done at this point. So I can't tell you any actual numbers, but the theory is that because the developer wouldn't be able to do this project if not for the TIF incentive, that there would be no project and there would be no benefit to the town at all if not for moving forward with the financing.
Is there flexibility though in crafting TIFs whereby schools still receive some portion? Is that not something that can be?
Certainly, that's a possibility. Yes, legally.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Just I know that may come up, and I understand they can't do the project, but I also realize there's a burden to schools, and 25 years is a long time for a contract.
Sure.
I wanted to clarify on the total unit count of the development. It's actually 400, maximum 400 single-family homes, for-sale residences, and 300 multifamily units. We're proposing the TIF allocation area be specific to the multifamily uses in the senior. So not touching the 400 single-family residential units that are for sale. If you look at the average minimum sale price of approximately $700,000 up to $3 million for the estate custom sections, we ran our own models before we even went down this path, and had a few conversations with the school leadership early in the PUD process. The amount of new tax revenue generated just from the single-family portion is significantly greater than the burden of the education costs. And so as a project whole, it balances out even with the TIF process. The reality is the multifamily will have some students, but historically it's not a significant portion of a resident population. Also, I would add that we have several sections, product sections of the single family that are geared towards seniors. Certainly they're not age restricted, but we can tell you with a great deal of confidence based on demographics of the community and how the product is designed for sale that it tends to not have an impact on schools, but provides that high basic assessed value.
So what you just said is actually, I was taking notes. It's good clarity because I wrote down 700, that someone had said 700.
700 total residential units, of which 400 for sale, 300 for rent.
Because I had written the TIF is not touching 700 single family homes ? So, so it was 400, and
Yes,
then
ma'am.
300 are in the TIF.
Yes, ma'am.
And how many bedrooms do we have planned for these 300?
In the 300, it's a mix of studio units, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, but it average about 1.5 among the total product. We actually were through the Plan Commission process a few weeks ago for the development plan approval for the multifamily. I think we fell just short of the 300. I think we ended up seeking approval for around 290 units total, but at approximately 1.5.
I appreciate hearing about the 400. I guess that was in there and I missed it. So thank you for calling that out, because that's a substantial bit of information for our friends who are interested in school funding.
President Plunkett, can I ask a couple questions?
Certainly.
Justin, thank you for all that. Real quick question. I saw Section A or Allocation Area A projected timeline 2026, full completion. Is that still accurate?
That is the plan, sir. The goal would be to start construction this summer, complete phase 1, majority infrastructure fall of this year. It'll trail into spring of next year, but just add phases as market demands. But the multifamily and a substantial portion of the single family is part of phase 1. So the multifamily, we would expect delivering, by the end of 25 or into early 26.
And what about Allocation Area B, which is
It's
senior living?
market driven, but we are working with a group to look at timing maybe a 2026 start. That's what we're targeting as a goal. I think that's a good pace for the phasing into the development as well. I hope you would believe, based on other developments we've done in central Indiana, that we're pretty discerning with the groups that we partner with. So trying to make sure that we find somebody in the senior space that will bring, beyond just a great customer experience for the residents, but also high quality architecture.
Do you have the projected assessed value of those 2 areas?
We do. That's been provided to the bond consultant to run these calculations. And I've been part of a few conversations related to TIF projects in the past. Typically, the projects I've been part of have been related to mixed-use developments that was using the TIF funds for like structured parking garage, that sort of thing. This one was unique and really generated by requests that came to us in our development planning process by the town. And our goal is to be good partners and listen well. And so I think every single one of these items is a direct response to a request that we receive. And in the spirit of the if but for test of the TIF per state statute, we will not be able to move forward with building this infrastructure but for the use of TIF funds. So really, and that's something, a message I shared. I know this is a new council and we really are resetting the conversation. I respect that we'll take whatever time it needs to take, but it's really a requirement for us to be able to move forward with the development as planned.
Of the 12.8 million, do you have a hierarchy of infrastructure improvements that need to occur first versus things that,
Ultimately, the roundabouts and some of the main utility mains, we're extending and connecting sanitary and water mains through the site from Oak up to the north end of the site that will loop the town, if you will. They like to have connectivity and have complete loops. And so absolutely that's necessary for our development as well, but hopefully it serves a public benefit beyond our project. But having those utilities in and the roundabouts are critical for us to move forward.
thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Who has the sewer for that area? The municipality. It is.
Yeah, it just started.
I'm sure we'll get further into a lot of these different discussions as the project continues. But I would like on the front end of this, as the conversations you and I have had, I appreciate the roundabout discussion. We just can't shut down that road entirely. We got to keep that north-south corridor open.
Yes, sir. Those comments were taken to heart by our development team, and all of the MOT, the maintenance of traffic plans, and our construction drawings have made sure that
Great.
the road stays open.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Any other questions from counselors? Again, we've got this particular item is a resolution to approve the Plan Commission order and create the Wild Air EDA. This would be an approval. So we hear this one time, just so everybody's on record. Any questions? I would entertain a motion.
I move for adoption of Resolution 2024-08.
Got a first from Counselor Stein,
Second.
a second from Counselor Norris. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. A lot of the same players here. So up next is a consideration of an ordinance authorizing the bonds for the Wild Air. This is ordinance 2024-08. This is a first reading, which means we will have a second reading at the next meeting, should we go through here. We have Corey, Tim, Barry with Crow, and Heather obviously available as well. Are there any questions for any of them?
Yeah, I just had one. I was reading section 6, and it talked about the mayor and the director of finance having express authority to approve modifications to the documents. I guess maybe Heather, is that boilerplate language? I went on further to read before we get into it that they can't change the amount, they can't change the interest rate, they can't change the duration. So I calmed down after reading that part of it. But I guess my question is, if they can't change, I mean, what can they modify? Is this just standard language?
Yeah.
Help me out with
Let
that.
this Heather answer, then you can ask the other Heather.
Yeah, which Heather? Sorry.
Go ahead, Heather.
Any Heather.
Yeah, I'd say that it is boilerplate language, and that's because what the statute requires at this point is that you have substantially final versions of the documents, but they haven't been fully negotiated yet. For instance, the bond purchase agreement has lots of blanks in it with regard to what the final debt service schedule is going to look like. Will it be 8% or less than that, right? Those things are still in flux. So it's because we're approving maximum parameters, we put that language in there so that we can continue to negotiate those fine details, but always, of course, within the parameters that you've approved.
Sure. And nothing against the mayor or the director of finance, just being the governing body for the fiscal or fiscally responsible body. I initially, my dander got up, but I calmed down afterwards.
Any other questions from counselors? Having none, I will make a motion to introduce ordinance 2024-08 on first reading.
Second.
Second from Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Thanks
you.
very much. All right, coming down the home stretch here. Consideration of an ordinance amending the Ready Grant Fund number. This is ordinance 2024-09. This is a first reading. If there are questions, we have Cindy here, Director, or Department of Finance and Records Director. I mean, I feel like after reading through this is just simply a correction of one fund number to another, right? Yeah. Any questions from counselors? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
Is this an introduction or an approval?
This would be a first reading, so we will have we will hear it again at the next meeting. So this would be an introduction on first reading.
I move to introduce ordinance 2024-9.
Vice President Burke seconds that. First from Counselor Sampson, second from Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next are other matters. Are there any other matters from counselors?
President Plunkett, I'd like to congratulate the Zionsville Arctic Eagles on their 4A state championship, the hockey team. They won over this weekend 1-0 against the formidable Evansville Purple team. So I wanted to congratulate them and all their hard work in getting to state. That's pretty awesome. And I know we have Dr. Kaufman in the crowd. And so, want to thank the team and keep going, keep doing their thing. So
Very cool.
awesome.
Thank you. Any other matters from counselors? I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A second from Counselor Norris. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. The next regular town council meeting is scheduled for Monday, March 18th, 2024 at 7:30 a.m. in the Zionsville Town Hall Council Chambers. Final notice will be posted in compliance with the Indiana Open Door Law. Thank you.